Good morning. I'm Mark Allen with Gaber.io, and I'm here today with Dennis Mortensen, the CEO and founder of X.AI. Good afternoon, Dennis. How you doing?
Good. Thanks much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I think I need a cup of coffee to wake up here. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Sure. I've done my computer science degree in the 90s and immediately got started on really entrepreneurial endeavors and have spent about 5 years on each one of my ventures and am now on the fifth venture and haven't done anything else. So I'll certainly, if not have knowledge, then have a ton of opinion about how to do startups. And we've been fortunate enough that of the 4 prior ones, we've had 3 exits and one that didn't work. That was the expensive MBA, if you will.
So you're batting 750 right now. That's really good.
That's not too shabby.
Right.
Let's just assume there's a lot of luck attached to it, which I think would be honest and fair.
Yes, and then and what's the count? 2 and 2 now on the 5th one.
We will. So in startup, at least as I see it, one way to win is to not die. So if you can just not die or not be willing to die, you have a just slightly higher likelihood of getting to the end. Most people, I wouldn't say give up. That's unfair. But kind of give up or surrender or are not willing to apply the grit which is really needed. Get through some difficult period, whether that be a financial or any other kind of dimension.
Yes,
so over the years, I think you assemble that grit or willingness to just not die.
Yes, and I think having your experience, I think you would agree that eventually something will come up that's going to challenge you in a business, right?
That is always the case. There's no scenario for where, hey, I wrote this business plan and we're now on page 3 executing exactly as we had hoped for. You barely get to the first bullet point before everything kind of implodes.
Yes. So well, now let's talk about X.AI. What technology do you bring to the market? Who's your typical customer? All those things.
Sure. So we brought the team back together first days of 2014, kind of seeing that the pain that is attached to that of setting up a meeting, just that little chore in your inbox of getting Mark and Dennis together next Wednesday at 1, which is kind of easy to do, but still a chore. And it's a chore that really is attached to anybody walking into any office. Surely sales will do 40, 45 meetings a week per person. Hardcore backend engineers might do a handful, and then everybody else in between. But if you ask them, though, the answer will be the same. So, Mark, do you like setting up meetings? The answer will be, no, I fucking hate it. And if I could escape it, that would be lovely. Now, we thought if there's some sort of unilateral agreement across everybody we interview, then there might be an opening to go apply software. So we put together some software that can help you get that next event on your calendar. And sometimes that can be as simple as me taking one of the types of meetings that I do, say chats with investors. I have a shared meeting template with my co-founder, Marcus, where we need to be able to share our availability when both of us can arrive at the same meeting with some investors. Sometimes we just send a link, go pick a time here. Sometimes we'll copy and paste that availability into an email or message. And sometimes, and that's certainly where we are unique or have some distinct IP, we will CC in our scheduling AI and ask in natural language. Scheduler, find some time for Marcus, me, and Josh over at SoftBank some afternoon end of next week for 90 minutes to go over the deck. Call it Series B. And that request, even in my kind of poor Danish English grammar, is something that we can actually understand and turn into a request, see exactly what we're being asked to do, see what other kind of promises we might have made for these individuals, and then send out some availability, almost like if you had somebody on your team do it. And that has certainly been an interesting journey, given language is not a solved science. But come the very end of it, we're really just the guys who try to schedule meetings. That's us. That's what we're trying to work on.
Very cool. Well, I must admit, I probably could use your service because I've had quite a few emails for some different meetings before. So we might talk about that afterwards.
We should.
Yes, we should. So it looks like you're based in Manhattan right now. Are you in your office or are you at home?
Yeah, this is downtown Manhattan. I do walk into the office from time to time. I'm the only one in the office right now, and I think I might as well have been at home. But I thought I'd put on a jacket and craft a honest backdrop now that you and I are talking today. So it's very close to where I live. I live down on Wall Street. It takes me 2 minutes to walk up here, so that's easy.
Yeah, I actually walked out to my patio too. It's overlooking this castle in Ireland. So your team, I'm assuming you have an office in New York, so you probably have employees in New York too, right? So have they all been working remotely since last March?
So we perhaps out of good decision making or just good karma decided to go full remote about 6 months prior to the world taking a turn for the worse or to the left. And in that kind of planning, when it did arrive, we were kind of well into it and had a good understanding. And I think the first kind of comment I would kind of make to that is remote might not be the best moniker, because remote suggests there's a kind of centralized base and you're remote from that.
Yes.
If there is no centralized base, then it's really just a distributed team that are in multiple locations. So the first thing that happened, certainly, when we went from having a single HQ, everybody's in New York, we turn up at 9 a.m. or whenever people arrive, and that's that, old school, to a fully distributed team, was that some of those people who lived here decided to get an immediate pay rise, not by me paying them more, but just by moving to Miami. Tax is different, cost of living is different, and all of a sudden, well, Marcus, my co-founder, closer to family, buying that house isn't impossible, might just be possible now, and all those kind of things that comes from not necessarily living in Manhattan or some sort of more expensive metro.
Interesting. So
we've started to kind of see the team move out.
Interesting. So, I mean, you're unlike most companies that like were forced to do it. You know, you found out on Saturday that everything's closed on Monday, right? So you did it over. Did you do it over time? Like, did you gradually do it? So it was a little bit easier on you?
So we did apply kind of multiple phases, and I think there's 100 things which we can talk about here, but it is not so much the change of address that is the important part. I think plenty of people will unfairly think of it as, so we have all these different locations now. That is the least of it. I think it's the processes that comes attached to that of working as a distributed team, for where some of them are kind of positive, some of them are perhaps not so positive. Some total, though, you can go have a look at it and then make your own call. To me, at least, it looks like we are coming up with a good ROI on just going fully distributed, at least in my opinion. A few of the things that I've certainly spotted was that whenever you're in the office, and we can go any direction you want here, but whenever you're in the office and whatever kind of processes that you attach to how you work, they seem tight, or certainly as tight as they can be, and you continue to kind of optimize on them, kind of small changes here and there. But any flaws in those processes are very easily hidden. Why? Because I can just shout across the table and the flaw gets kind of flattened out and you forget or don't even see that there was a flaw. Once you're in a distributed setting where I can't do that, then the flaw is exposed. And what you thought was really tight processes for how we go from a user input to a note in how we design a new feature to how that many steps later ends up in the product, that felt like we got that down to the nth detail. But as soon as we went fully distributed, we found that this part not so much, or this part not so much.
Mhm.
And I've had to kind of tighten those. But that was actually just a benefit, because that means
Mhm.
we wouldn't otherwise have been able to see it. And it also suggests that some of the well, waste that comes attached to inefficient processes got eliminated. So we don't have that waste, because the process was just kind of grind to a halt in this new setting, and we had to kind of solve for it. So it's way more efficient. That's the one part. The other part is many things, certainly in the office, are synchronous. And many things, or most things, in the kind of distributed setting are asynchronous. I think there's a lot of value to working asynchronously, meaning that I can actually pile things up exactly as I see fit. And if I'm a maker, do 4 hours of really good, deep work, and some of those chores that comes attached to that of working in an office, I can kind of collapse and kind of do in bulk. So that was certainly, I think, a real benefit, especially if you have makers on your team, like data scientists and engineers and so on and so forth. Then last, and then I'll stop talking. The last one I spotted was, and this one I really like, and what are the most polite way to put it? It is very, the easiest way to cheat is to be in an office environment, because, and cheat is too strong, but all you need to do to look like a valuable team member is to somewhat turn up on time, be reasonably loud, and don't leave too early. Then there'll be a picture of Timmy. Yeah, he's here, he's vocal, he's leaning in. He's none of those things. He's just kind of around the office, pats a few people on the back. If anything, he's a detractor. Because he kind of breaks maker time, and is just kind of walking around. It's a little loud, but we all notice him. He's an extrovert.
Yes.
Then you have a few introverts for where they don't say much, they do really good work, but they kind of disappear in the office. Now, you know what? In the distributed setting, you are primarily measured by output. And if Timmy comes up short every Friday, there's just not enough Slack emojis that you can give me that will not have Timmy be a poor performer. And that, I think, changed that kind of internal ranking. Nobody ranks their employees, but there's certainly something for where if you close your eyes, you know high performers from low performers. And what you thought was this, and I'm not saying it's this, but it's not what you originally thought.
A little more blended.
A little bit more blended, but also a little bit more honest.
Yes.
And I think a lot of those who are perhaps not super loud, perhaps not aggressively extroverts, are kind of winning. Positively winning, because they're just good contributors.
Yeah, you're not the first executive that's told me that what they says it leveled the playing field, that everybody was on a more equal footing because they're distributed and they don't have, it's like you take care of your buddy who you go to lunch with, right? Yeah, interesting. So now what I find interesting is you've gone fully distributed, but you still have an office. So are you a hybrid model, or are you just riding the storm?
Tomorrow is actually the last day of this particular lease. So you're seeing the end of it. So we kept a corner of this as a watering hole for where, if I'm really honest, then Dennis could kind of walk up to the office and kind of work the whiteboard, hang out a little bit, but it doesn't make any sense. So tomorrow, well, that's the end of this particular backdrop. I do think we'll sign a few kind of WeWork style water holes, just so that some of those kind of benefits, and it's not all bad being in the office. Sometimes two people applying a little bit of ingenuity at the same whiteboard can come up with things that are a little harder to do over Zoom.
Yeah, I agree. And if only there was a scheduling system where they could schedule that, right?
So we are, as I'm sure you would have assumed, quite anal on working that calendar.
I would imagine. So from your opinion, your perception, though, what do you think is the future of remote or distributed employment? I agree with you. It is distributed. I mean, you're obviously bought in. Do you foresee X.AI hiring people from all over the country and all over the world?
We already started doing that. And here's the funny story. When you venture out initially when we were in New York, it was either you turn up on 200 Broadway or you don't work here, as in those are the requirements. And as we moved to this new setting, instead of going global, we went to Connecticut. And there's really no difference between Connecticut and Rio because they're both on Zoom and both in somewhat similar time zones.
Yeah.
But you take these baby steps, which is kind of silly. And we have now kind of just gone global. And I think the last hire we did was in Brazil.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Yeah, no, I actually do some consulting for a company that their best developers in North Dakota. And they got guys in Russia doing development. There is zero office. It's great. They started out distributed and there's like no reason whatsoever to change.
The one thing that seems still difficult to escape, which rhymes with an office setting, is that if you have too much of a delta in the time zones between you and your team members, you do create some friction. Yes. Meaning that if the next hire is in Singapore, which is exactly 12 hours, so the opposite side of the world,
yes,
that makes for kind of hard setups in doing that stand-up and so on and so forth. So we actually do try to find kind of people that are not too much of a delta away from EST as a time zone.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I've done that before where one of you is meeting at 10 o'clock at night and one of you is at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? And
yeah,
as you know, at 10 o'clock at night, you're not as sharp as you are at 10 o'clock in the morning.
That is correct.
Yes, so it's just part of and I think the solution is if people have similar job responsibilities, they could be 12 hours away, like distributed in Singapore or in that part of the world, right?
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So, well, Dennis, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been great talking to you. We'll have to schedule another one of these meetings. So
I will make it easy. We'll make it something we do every 3 weeks.
That sounds good to me. Have a great day.